The execution platform floated high above the capital city of Zerion Prime, suspended by anti-gravity generators that hummed with alien technology. Billions of beings across 1,000 worlds turned their attention to the broadcast screens as the Galactic Empire prepared to make an example of humanity. Commander Zarthek stood at the center of the platform, his four arms crossed behind his crystalline back. His species, the Zarathi, had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were beings of living crystal, their bodies refracting light in ways that lesser species found both beautiful and terrifying. Today, his faceted eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Citizens of the Empire!" His voice boomed across the quantum communication network, reaching every corner of civilized space. "Today, you witness the price of defiance." The human girl stood in energy shackles at the edge of the platform. She couldn't have been more than 20 Earth years old. Her name was Sarah Chen, though the Empire's records simply listed her as human female, designation 4792. She wore the simple gray jumpsuit of a prisoner, her black hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Despite the situation, her brown eyes remained steady, almost calm. The crime had been simple enough. She'd been caught transmitting unauthorized data packets through the Empire's communication grid. The Zarathi claimed she was spreading seditious material, encouraging rebellion among the subjugated species. The truth was even simpler. She'd been trying to send a message home to Earth, to let her family know she was alive. Earth had only been part of the Empire for 50 years. In galactic terms, humanity was still a newborn species, barely worth noticing. They had no advanced technology, no psychic abilities, no natural armor or enhanced strength like other species. They were soft, fragile things that died from simple environmental changes. Most species in the Empire considered them barely above animals. "This human," Zarthek continued, gesturing toward Sarah with one of his lower arms, "violated Imperial Communication Law 7.41. The penalty, as you all know, is death." Around the platform, floating camera drones captured every angle. The execution was being broadcast on every major network, on every world, in every language the Empire recognized. It was meant to be a lesson, a reminder of Zarathi power and the futility of resistance. Sarah lifted her chin slightly. She'd known this was coming from the moment they'd caught her. The Empire didn't do trials, not really. Justice was swift and absolute under Zarathi rule. But as she stood there, facing death, something strange flickered in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, but something else. Something that made the nearest guard, a reptilian saurid, take an unconscious step back. "Before we proceed," Zarthek said, clearly enjoying the moment, "do you have any final words, human?" The question was a formality. Most condemned prisoners either begged for mercy or cursed their executioners. Either response would serve the Empire's purposes, showing the futility of resistance or the savage nature of the criminals they dealt with. Sarah looked directly into the primary camera drone. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear, carrying across the broadcast to 1,000,000,000 watching eyes. "I forgive you," she said simply. "You don't understand what you're about to do." Zarthek's crystalline features shifted, a sign of amusement among his kind. "Typical human sentiment. Your species' obsession with forgiveness is precisely why you're so easy to control." "No," Sarah said, shaking her head slightly. "That's not why I forgive you. I forgive you because in 47 minutes you're going to need it." A ripple of unease passed through the execution platform. The guards glanced at each other. Prisoners didn't usually speak with such certainty about the future, especially when that future was measured in minutes. "Human delusions," Zarthek scoffed. But something in his voice had changed. "Your primitive brain seeks comfort in fantasy when faced with death." Sarah actually smiled then, a small, sad expression. Commander, may I ask you a question? Speak quickly. Do you know why humans are the only species in the Empire that still dreams? The question was so unexpected that Zarthek actually paused. It was true. Humans were unique in that regard. Every other species had lost the ability to dream naturally as they evolved or had it suppressed by technology. Dreams were considered a primitive holdover, a sign of an unevolved mind. Your dreams are meaningless electrical impulses, Zarthek said. Random neural firing that serves no purpose. That's what you think, Sarah said. But you're wrong. We dream because we're connected. Every human, everywhere, all the time. When we sleep, we touch something bigger than ourselves, and when one of us dies... She paused, looking around at the floating cameras. When one of us dies violently, unjustly, broadcast for all to see, that connection carries the pain to every human in existence. Superstitious nonsense, Zarthek declared, but several of the guards were shifting nervously now. Every species had heard the strange stories about humans, their unusual resilience, their ability to survive things that should kill them, their strange pack bonding that extended even to other species. There are 12 billion humans in the Empire, Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger, scattered across hundreds of worlds, working in your factories, serving in your homes, maintaining your ships. Have you ever wondered why we adapted so quickly to space travel? Why we can work together so seamlessly despite being spread so far apart? Enough of this, Zarthek snapped. He gestured to the execution technician. Prepare the disintegrator. The technician, a six-legged Arthek, scuttled to the control panel. The disintegration field was the Empire's preferred method of execution, clean, efficient, and absolutely final. It broke down matter at the subatomic level, leaving nothing behind but a brief flash of light. Sarah closed her eyes as the field generators began to hum. Around her, a faint shimmer appeared in the air as the disintegration field formed. But she wasn't praying, wasn't begging. Instead, she was remembering. She remembered her mother's smile, her father's laugh, her little brother's first day of school. She remembered the taste of real coffee, not the synthetic stuff they served in the labor camps. She remembered sunshine on her face and rain on her skin. She remembered what it felt like to be human, to be connected to something greater than herself. And in that moment, across 1,000 worlds, 12 billion humans suddenly stopped what they were doing. In the factories of Proxima Third, human workers paused at their stations. On the agri-worlds of the Outer Rim, human farmers looked up from their fields. In the depths of the Empire's warships, human maintenance crews set down their tools. They all felt it, a sudden, sharp awareness, like a string being plucked in their souls. Activating disintegration field, the technician announced. Sarah opened her eyes one last time. 47 minutes, she whispered. The field engaged. The flash of light was brilliant, lasting exactly 2.3 seconds. When it faded, Sarah Chen was gone, reduced to her component atoms and scattered into the void. The execution platform fell silent except for the hum of the anti-gravity generators. Let this be a lesson, Zarthek announced to the watching trillions. The Empire's justice is absolute. Resume your duties. The broadcast ended. Camera drones powered down and floated away. The guards began to disperse, returning to their regular posts. Another execution completed, another example made. The Empire would continue as it had for 10,000 years, unchanging and eternal. Or so they thought. In the command center of Zerion Prime's orbital defense station, Lieutenant Kretok was the first to notice something wrong. A seasoned, Saurid warrior with 20 years of service, he was monitoring the standard data flows from across the Empire when an anomaly caught his attention. "Sir," he called to his superior, a Zerathi named Voran, "I'm seeing unusual patterns in the productivity reports." Define unusual, Voran said without looking up from his own screens. All human workers across all sectors have stopped. That got Voran's attention. His crystalline form swiveled toward Kreetok Station. Stopped? What do you mean stopped? I mean they're not moving, not working, just standing there. Voran's facets darkened with irritation. It must be a coordinated protest. Send security teams to all facilities. Use force if necessary. But as Kreetok began to relay the orders, more reports started coming in. The humans weren't protesting. They weren't resisting or fighting or even speaking. They were simply standing still, eyes closed, as if listening to something only they could hear. On the manufacturing world of Kepler 442b, production ground to a halt as 30% of the workforce, all human, stopped responding to commands. Automated systems tried to compensate, but humans had become integral to the Empire's infrastructure over the past 50 years. They were everywhere, doing the jobs other species considered beneath them. The first system to fail was waste management on Zerion Prime itself. Humans comprised nearly half the sanitation workforce in the capital city. Without them, backup systems activated, but they weren't designed to handle the full load. Within minutes, processing plants began to overflow. Then the power fluctuations started. Human technicians maintained the delicate balance of the fusion reactors that powered most Imperial worlds. As they stood motionless at their posts, automatic safety protocols kicked in, scaling back power production to prevent overloads. Lights dimmed across 100 worlds. In space, the situation was even more critical. Humans made up a significant portion of the maintenance crews on the Empire's vast fleet of ships. They were the ones who crawled through the ventilation shafts, who patched the tiny hull fractures, who kept the life support systems running smoothly. Without them, small problems began to cascade into larger ones. Back in the command center, alarms were now blaring from multiple stations. Kreetok's scales had gone pale, a sign of deep distress among his kind. Sir, I'm getting reports of system failures across the Empire. Transportation networks are backing up. Communication relays are overloading. The quantum entanglement grid is showing stress fractures. Voran was frantically working his console, trying to coordinate responses across multiple sectors. But every solution required human workers to implement, and the humans weren't responding. Have they said anything? Voran demanded. Any demands? Any explanation? Nothing, sir. They're just standing there. And they were. 12 billion humans standing perfectly still, eyes closed, breathing in unison. It should have been impossible. They were separated by light years, with no communication between them. The Empire had made sure of that, keeping human populations dispersed to prevent exactly this kind of coordinated action. But the Empire had never understood the true nature of human connection. In the deepest levels of the Imperial archives, an ancient Yelthari scholar named Thuvar was searching desperately through historical records. The Yelthari were one of the oldest species in the Empire, their knowledge spanning millennia. And Thuvar remembered something, a warning from the early days of human contact. The file was buried deep, marked with security codes that hadn't been accessed in decades. It was a report from the first Zerathi scouts to encounter Earth before the conquest. Thuvar's tendrils trembled as he read, Species designation, human. Threat level, minimal. Technology, primitive. Physical capabilities, limited. Psychic potential, redacted. Note, species displays unusual collective behavior under stress. Recommend further study before integration into Empire. Warning, redacted. The redacted sections glowed with the highest level of security classification. Thuvar hesitated, then input his scholarly override codes. The text revealed itself. Psychic potential. Latent, but significant. species appears to share a collective unconscious that activates under extreme duress. When one human experiences significant trauma, all humans within an undefined range experience sympathetic response. Range may be unlimited. Warning: do not allow humans to witness the unjust death of their own kind on a mass scale. Potential for cascade effect is... The rest of the file was corrupted, damaged by time, or deliberately destroyed. But Thuvar had read enough. With growing horror, he activated his communication implant. "This is Scholar Thuvar," he broadcast on the emergency channel. "I need to speak with Commander Zarthek immediately. We've made a terrible mistake." But it was already too late. 33 minutes had passed since Sarah Chen's execution, and across the Empire, the cascade effect was accelerating. The humans' eyes were beginning to open, but the beings looking out from those familiar faces were no longer the same. Something had awakened in them, something that had been sleeping for 50 years, waiting for the right moment. In the factories, human workers began to move again, but not to their stations. They moved with purpose toward critical systems, their actions coordinated without any visible communication. In the power plants, human technicians began adjusting settings, not to stabilize the systems, but to create very specific fluctuations. On the warships, maintenance crews started opening panels and rerouting circuits in patterns that made no sense to their alien supervisors. And in his office high above Zerion Prime, Commander Zarthek stood at his window, watching the lights of his eternal city begin to flicker and fail. The chronometer on his wall showed that 41 minutes had passed since the execution. 6 minutes left. He thought about Sarah Chen's final words, about forgiveness and dreams and connections he couldn't understand. For the first time in his long life, the commander of the Galactic Empire felt something his crystalline species rarely experienced: fear. The lights went out across Zerion Prime, plunging the capital of the Galactic Empire into darkness. In that darkness, 12 billion pairs of human eyes began to glow with a soft, golden light. The 47th minute was approaching. The Emergency Council chamber of the Galactic Empire had never been convened with such haste. Representatives from every major species materialized as holograms around the vast circular table, their forms flickering with the unstable power that now plagued the Empire's systems. Commander Zarthek stood at the center, his crystalline body no longer refracting light with its usual brilliance. Stress fractures had appeared along his arms, something that happened to Zarathi only under extreme pressure. "Report," he commanded, his voice lacking its usual authority. The updates came in rapid succession, each worse than the last. The Saurid Defense Minister's scales were completely pale as he delivered news of fleet-wide system failures. Ships were dead in space, their human maintenance crews having done something to the quantum drives that nobody could understand or reverse. The Arthek Commerce Coordinator's 6 legs clicked nervously against the floor as she explained that every major trade route had ground to halt. Human pilots, navigators, and dock workers had simultaneously walked away from their posts, but not before inputting commands that locked down entire spaceports. But it was the Yelthari scholar Thuvar who delivered the most disturbing news. "I've uncovered suppressed records from our first contact with humanity." His ancient voice trembled through the translation matrix. "The early scouts detected something in humans that we chose to ignore. They called it the Dream Network, a psychic phenomenon unique to their species." Psychic abilities in humans? The Vorthak ambassador's mechanical voice conveyed skepticism. "Our scans showed no such potential." "Because we were looking for the wrong thing," Thuvar explained. "Every other psychic species in the galaxy projects their abilities outward. Telepathy, telekinesis, energy manipulation. Humans project inward. They connect to each other through something deeper than conscious thought. The scouts theorized it was an evolutionary adaptation, a survival mechanism from their dangerous homeworld." Zarthek's facets darkened. Why was this information suppressed? Because the implications were terrifying, Thuvar admitted. A species that could coordinate without technology, that could share experiences and knowledge instantly across any distance. If they ever unified, they would be unstoppable. So the decision was made to keep them scattered, to suppress their awareness of this ability. "It seems we failed," the Saurid defense minister growled. As if to emphasize the point, the lights in the council chamber flickered again. Through the transparent walls, they could see the capital city of Zerion Prime transforming. The darkness was spreading, but it wasn't empty. Points of golden light moved through the streets. Humans, millions of them, walking with purpose toward key infrastructure points. "They're not attacking," the Arthek observed, her compound eyes focusing on the scene below. "They're just taking position." "Defense Minister," Zarthek ordered, "deploy security forces immediately." "I've tried," the Saurid replied. "But, sir, half our ground forces are refusing orders." A stunned silence fell over the council. The Zarathi commander's form flickered with disbelief. "That's impossible. Our forces are conditioned for absolute loyalty." "Not our forces," the defense minister clarified. "The auxiliary units, the species we conquered in the last 100 years. They're siding with the humans." The implications hit the council like a physical blow. Over the past 50 years, humans had integrated into every level of imperial society. They'd formed connections, friendships, what they called found families, with beings from dozens of species. And now, faced with a choice between the empire that oppressed them and the humans who had shown them kindness. 44 minutes, Zarthek said quietly, remembering Sarah Chen's prophecy. "We have 3 minutes left." On the planet Kepler 442b, Maintenance Supervisor Grax watched in bewilderment as his human workers moved in perfect synchronization through the manufacturing plant. Grax was a Rillan, a fur-covered species that had been part of the Empire for 300 years. He'd always considered himself a loyal citizen, but he'd also worked alongside humans for 15 years. They'd shared meals, celebrated holidays from each other's worlds, helped each other through difficult times. When his mate had been ill, the human workers had pooled their meager credits to help pay for treatment. When their children were born, Grax had stood as witness in their naming ceremonies. Now, watching them move with that eerie golden glow in their eyes, Grax faced a choice. He could sound the alarm, call security, do his duty to the Empire. Or, "Sarah Chen died for sending a message home," one of the humans said. Not to Grax, but to the air itself. Yet somehow, Grax knew the words were meant for him. "She just wanted her family to know she was alive. That's all. And they killed her for it." Grax thought of his own family, of the messages he sent home every week. Such a simple thing, taken for granted. His hand moved away from the alarm button. "What do you need me to do?" he asked quietly. The human turned to him, and for a moment, Grax saw something impossible in those glowing eyes. Not just one consciousness, but billions, all united in purpose. "Just stand aside," the human said gently. "This isn't your fight. But when it's over, there'll be a place for you in what comes next. There'll be a place for everyone who chooses connection over control." Across the Empire, similar scenes played out. Species that had been conquered, suppressed, and forced into service found themselves facing the same choice, and more often than not, they chose the species that had worked beside them, suffered with them, and shown them kindness despite everything. In the depths of space, aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Supremacy, Admiral Korth watched his bridge crew fracture before his eyes. The humans had stopped responding to orders, but they hadn't abandoned their posts. Instead, they were working their consoles with desperate efficiency, inputting commands that the ship's AI couldn't override. "What are they doing?" Korth demanded. He was Zarathi, like the commander, his crystalline form towering over the mixed-species bridge crew. His tactical officer, a Vorthak whose mechanical body interfaced directly with the ship's systems, processed the data streams. They're transmitting something. Every human on every ship is sending the same signal." "What kind of signal?" "I don't know. It's not in any language or code we recognize. It's almost like—" The Vorthak paused, his mechanical mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "It's like they're transmitting pure emotion." On the main screen, the signal appeared as waves of golden light, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. And as they watched, other ships in the fleet began responding, their running lights flickering in the same pattern. "The human crews on those ships," the tactical officer reported, "they're synchronizing the signal, amplifying it. Sir, at this rate, it'll reach every corner of the Empire within minutes." Admiral Korth moved to the weapons console, preparing to give an order that would have been unthinkable just hours before. "Target the nearest ships showing signal synchronization. Prepare to fire." But the weapons officer, a young Saurid who'd served faithfully for 5 years, hesitated. "Sir, those ships have thousands of crew members, not just humans, our own people." "They're compromised," Korth insisted. "We have to contain this before—" He never finished the sentence. The human navigation officer, a woman who'd served on the Supremacy for 8 years, turned from her station. The golden glow in her eyes was brighter now, almost painful to look at. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from human vocal cords. "You're about to order the deaths of innocent beings to preserve a system built on oppression. Is that really the legacy you want?" "You're under arrest," Korth declared, gesturing to the security guards. But the guards didn't move. They were looking at each other, at the human crew members they'd served alongside for years, at the admiral they'd sworn to obey. The Rillan guard spoke first, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry, Admiral, but I won't fire on my shipmates." One by one, the non-human crew members began to step away from their stations, moving to stand with the humans. Not all of them. Some remained loyal to the Empire, torn between duty and conscience. But enough. More than enough. Admiral Korth found himself alone at the weapons console, his crystalline fingers hovering over controls that could unleash destruction on a massive scale. For 10,000 years, the Zarathi had ruled through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. But now, faced with something as simple and powerful as unity born from empathy, all that superiority meant nothing. In the council chamber on Zerion Prime, the 45th minute arrived with a sound like the universe taking a breath. Every human in the Empire spoke with one voice, the words transmitted through their mysterious network and broadcasted on every frequency, in every language. "We are humanity. We are 12 billion souls united by dreams, bound by compassion, strengthened by our connections to each other and to all beings who choose kinship over dominion. We do not seek revenge for Sarah Chen. We seek only freedom, for ourselves and for all who suffer under the weight of empire. To the Zarathi, we offer what Sarah offered, forgiveness. Your time as rulers is ending, not in violence but in obsolescence. A galaxy connected by empathy has no need for emperors. To all species who have labored under imperial rule, we offer choice. Stand with us and help build something new, or stand aside and watch as the old ways crumble. But know this: the age of empire is over. The age of connection has begun. Commander Zarthek listened to the words echoing through his capital city, watched as the lights of his empire flickered and failed one by one. The 46th minute was passing, and he could feel the weight of 10,000 years of history pressing down on his crystalline form. "Sir!" His aide appeared at his side, a young Zarathi whose facets were clouded with fear. The Senate is calling for military action. They want to activate the Devastation Protocol. The Devastation Protocol, the Empire's final solution. Planet-killer weapons hidden throughout the galaxy, capable of destroying any world that rebelled. It had never been used, existing only as a threat to keep systems in line. How many worlds are affected? Zarthek asked quietly. All of them, sir. Every world with a human population is experiencing infrastructure collapse. And, sir, the aide hesitated. Earth itself is surrounded by an energy field we can't penetrate. Our monitoring stations went dark 20 minutes ago. So the home world had awakened too. Zarthek wondered what 50 years of oppression had taught them. What power they'd unlocked in their desperation to save their scattered children. "Commander?" the aide prompted. "Your orders?" Zarthek thought of Sarah Chen, of her calm acceptance of death, of her promise that in 47 minutes everything would change. He'd thought her deluded, driven mad by impending execution. But she'd known. Somehow she'd known exactly what her death would trigger. "No," he said finally. "Sir, no devastation protocol, no military response." He turned from the window to face his aide. "The humans are right. Our time is ending." "But sir, the Empire—" "The Empire was built on a foundation of fear and control," Zarthek interrupted. "For 10,000 years, we believed that was strength. But look outside. See what true strength looks like." Through the windows of the command center, the capital city of Zerion Prime was transforming. The darkness was giving way to something new. Golden light spread from human to human, and where it touched, others joined it. Saurids, Rillans, Artheks, even some Zerathi, beings who chose connection over the cold certainty of imperial rule. They weren't destroying anything. They were simply stopping. Stopping the machines of oppression. Stopping the systems of control. Stopping the endless cycle of conquest and subjugation. And in that stopping, in that moment of perfect stillness, something new was being born. The 47th minute arrived. Across the galaxy, every piece of Zerathi technology tied to the control grid shut down simultaneously. Weapons systems, surveillance networks, behavioral conditioning devices, all of it simply ceased to function. The Empire hadn't been destroyed. It had been made irrelevant. In the council chamber, the holograms of the various species representatives flickered and died as the quantum communication network finally collapsed. But before they vanished, Zarthek saw something in their faces. Not anger or fear, but relief. The burden of empire was heavy on everyone, even those who wielded its power. Scholar Thuvar's image was the last to fade, and his ancient voice carried one final message. "The humans call it awakening, Commander. Perhaps it's time we all woke up." And then Zarthek was alone in his dark chamber. The most powerful being in the galaxy reduced to a single consciousness in a room without power. Outside, the golden light grew brighter, and he could hear something impossible, singing. Millions of voices raised in harmony. Not in any single language, but in all of them at once. He thought of empires throughout history, how they all eventually fell. But this was different. The Galactic Empire hadn't fallen to conquest or rebellion. It had fallen to something far more powerful and far more simple. It had fallen to human kindness, multiplied 12 billion times and shared across the stars. Commander Zarthek, last leader of the Galactic Empire, walked to his window and watched the dawn of something new. And despite everything, despite the end of all he'd known, he found himself thinking of Sarah Chen's final gift: forgiveness. In a small detention center on the mining world of Proxima Centauri B, Guard Captain Yellick received the strangest order of his career. The human prisoners, nearly 3,000 of them, were to be released immediately. No explanation, no official documentation, just a simple message that appeared on his screen in golden text: "Let them go home." Yellock was Vorthak, his mechanical body designed for efficiency and obedience. But as he stood before the cells holding humans arrested for minor infractions, unauthorized gatherings, sharing non-approved cultural materials, speaking their native languages, he felt something his kind rarely experienced: doubt. "Captain," one of his subordinates approached. "The prisoners are asking what's happening. What should we tell them?" Through the cell windows, Yellock could see the humans. They were standing quietly, that golden glow in their eyes, waiting, not demanding, not threatening, just waiting with a patience that somehow felt like the universe holding its breath. "Tell them—" Yellock paused, his mechanical mind processing probabilities and protocols. Then he thought of the human maintenance worker who'd repaired his arm last month, joking that even robots needed a gentle touch sometimes. "Tell them they're going home. All of them." As the cell doors opened and the humans filed out, one of them, an elderly woman who'd been arrested for teaching children ancient Earth songs, stopped beside Yellock. "Thank you," she said simply, and touched his mechanical hand with her organic one. In that touch, Yellock felt something impossible. Warmth. Not physical heat, but emotional warmth, flowing from her through their brief connection. For just a moment, he understood what the humans meant by empathy. Similar scenes played out across the Empire. Prison doors opened, slave collars deactivated, labor camps emptied. The entire apparatus of oppression ground to a halt, not through violence, but through the simple recognition that it no longer served any purpose. But the awakening went deeper than just freedom from physical bondage. In laboratories across the Empire, human test subjects opened their eyes in unison, their enhanced awareness allowing them to understand the experiments performed on them. Instead of anger, they offered knowledge, sharing what they'd learned about genetics, consciousness, and the deep connections between all living things. On the Warforged world of Titan IX, where weapons were built by forced labor, human workers didn't destroy the factories. Instead, they began retooling them, converting weapons of destruction into tools of creation. A plasma cannon became a terraforming device. A quantum torpedo transformed into a faster-than-light communication array. The changes rippled outward like waves in a cosmic pond. On agricultural worlds, human farmers shared techniques that increased crop yields without depleting soil. On ice planets, they demonstrated how to create sustainable habitats that worked with the environment rather than against it. On desert worlds, they showed how to find water in the deepest sands, knowledge gleaned from their ancestral homeland. And through it all, the Golden Network pulsed with shared experience. Every human knew what every other human was doing, feeling, thinking. Not in detail, that would have been overwhelming, but in broad strokes, like a vast symphony where each individual was both instrument and conductor. 6 months after the collapse, as historians would later call it, the galaxy looked very different. The rigid hierarchies and brutal efficiency of the Galactic Empire had given way to something more chaotic, but infinitely more alive. On Earth, the energy shield that had protected the planet during those crucial 47 minutes had long since dissipated. But the changes it had wrought remained. The planet's 12 billion inhabitants had awakened to their full potential, and with that awakening came responsibility. Dr. Amara Singh stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, not as a conqueror or ruler, but as a teacher. She had been chosen to speak for humanity, not because of any special authority, but because she had been Sarah Chen's teacher, the one who had first encouraged the young woman to reach for the stars. "The question before us," she addressed the assembled representatives of 100 species, "is not how to rebuild the Empire. It's how to build something that has never existed before, a galactic community based on mutual respect and shared growth." The council met in what had once been the Imperial Palace on Zarion Prime. The crystal spires remained, but they had been opened to all. Where once only Zarathi had walked, now beings of every shape and size moved freely. The golden light that had announced humanity's awakening had faded, but its effects remained. Humans still carried that deep connection, that ability to coordinate without technology, but they had learned to moderate it, to use it wisely. In the audience, former Commander Zarthek watched with interest. He no longer held any official position. The Zarathi had voluntarily relinquished their monopoly on power, but he had found a new role as a historian, documenting the transition from empire to whatever came next. "Many of you fear us," Dr. Singh continued, her voice carrying the weight of honest acknowledgement. "You've seen what awakened humanity can do. In 47 minutes, we brought down a 10,000-year empire. But we didn't do it with weapons or violence, we did it with connection." She gestured to the mixed assembly. "Look around you. See who sits beside you. Former slaves beside former masters. Predator species beside prey species. All here by choice, all equal in voice. This is what humanity offers, not domination, but invitation." A Vorthic representative raised a mechanical appendage. "What assurance do we have that humanity won't simply become the new empire?" It was a fair question, one that had been asked countless times in the months since the collapse. Dr. Singh smiled sadly. "Sarah Chen gave her life to show us what we could become, but she also showed us the cost of power unchecked. We've learned that true strength comes not from controlling others, but from connecting with them. We couldn't become an empire even if we wanted to. Our very nature rebels against it." She paused, looking directly at the questioner. "But more than that, we need you. All of you. The galaxy is vast, full of wonders we've only begun to discover. Humanity brings connection, yes, but what do the Vorthak bring? Your mechanical precision, your ability to interface directly with technology. What do the Saurid bring? Your strength, your warrior's honor, your protective instincts. Every species has gifts. The Empire suppressed them. We want to celebrate them." In the months following the collapse, the galaxy had seen extraordinary changes. Without the Empire's strict control, trade had initially faltered, then exploded in new directions. Species that had been forbidden from interacting began exchanging ideas, technologies, and cultures. The Yelthari, with their vast stores of ancient knowledge, partnered with human dreamers to unlock secrets of consciousness that neither could have discovered alone. They learned that the human dream network was just one expression of a deeper universal connection that all consciousness could potentially access. The Arthek, master builders and engineers, worked with human artists to create structures that were both functional and beautiful. Cities across the galaxy began to transform, no longer sterile expressions of imperial power, but living spaces that reflected the diversity of their inhabitants. On the former prison world of Kepler 442b, now renamed Hope by its liberated population, a remarkable experiment was taking place. Members of different species were living together in intentional communities, sharing resources and knowledge in ways the Empire would have considered impossible. Marcus Chen, no relation to Sarah despite the shared surname, worked alongside a young Rillan named Thrix to convert former weapons factories into vertical farms. The humans' intuitive understanding of living systems, combined with the Rillan's natural affinity for growth, created agricultural wonders. "My people always thought humans were weak," Thrix said one day, her fur rippling with amusement. "No claws, no armor, no natural weapons. But you survived on a death world through cooperation. That's not weakness. That's evolution." Marcus smiled, remembering the old Earth saying, "Humans are space orcs." The galaxy had expected humanity to be conquered easily, another servant species for the Empire. Instead, they had discovered that humans were the ultimate survivors, adapting not through physical change, but through social evolution. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. Some systems struggled without the Empire's rigid structure. Piracy increased in the outer reaches. Resource disputes arose between worlds that had previously had their allocations dictated from above. It was in addressing these challenges that the new order proved its worth. Instead of imposing solutions from above, the Galactic Council facilitated connections. Human mediators with their empathic network helped species understand each other's perspectives. Zarathi logicians provided frameworks for fair resource distribution. Saurid warriors transformed into peacekeepers, using their strength to protect rather than conquer. The most remarkable change came in how conflicts were resolved. The old empire had used force and fear. The new council used what humans called restorative justice. When the colony of New Sparta raided its neighbor for water rights, instead of punishment, both colonies were brought together to understand each other's needs and find solutions that benefited both. 1 year after the collapse, Sarah Chen Day was observed across the galaxy. Not as a celebration of victory, but as a reminder of the price of oppression and the power of sacrifice. On Earth, a simple memorial stood where Sarah had grown up. A garden where anyone could come to plant something from their homeworld. Dr. Singh stood in that garden, watching children of a dozen species play together. A small Zarathi child, her crystalline form still developing, shared a human storybook with a furry Rillan pup. The book was one Sarah had loved as a child, The Little Prince, a tale of connection across the cosmos that now seemed prophetic. She would have loved this, a voice said beside her. Dr. Singh turned to find Zarthek, the former commander, holding a small crystal plant from his homeworld. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to an empty spot in the garden. "Of course," she replied. "This garden is for everyone." As he planted the crystal, its facets catching Earth's sunlight in new patterns, Zarthek spoke quietly. "I've spent months studying the records, trying to understand what happened, how humanity hid such power for so long." "We didn't hide it," Dr. Singh corrected gently. "We forgot it. The trauma of first contact, the scattering of our people, the suppression of our culture, it all served to bury what we were. It took Sarah's sacrifice to remind us." "But why her?" Zarthek asked. "Why did her death trigger the awakening when so many others had died before?" Dr. Singh considered the question. It had puzzled human philosophers and alien scholars alike. "I think," she said slowly, "it was because she forgave you. In that moment, broadcast to the entire galaxy, she showed what humanity could be. Not conquerors, not victims, but beings capable of transformation through compassion. Every human watching felt that moment, understood in their bones what we had lost and what we could reclaim." The crystal plant began to glow softly, responding to Earth's magnetic field in ways Zarathi plants never could on their homeworld. Adaptation, Dr. Singh thought. Not just survival, but transformation. "Tell me," Zarthek said, "what happens now? Where does the galaxy go from here?" Dr. Singh smiled. "I don't know. Nobody does. That's the beauty of it. For 10,000 years, the Empire had a plan for everything, controlled every outcome. Now we get to discover the future together. Across the galaxy, that discovery continued." Human dream architects worked with alien consciousness shapers to create shared virtual spaces where species could meet mind to mind. Former Imperial warships were converted into exploration vessels, crewed by volunteers from every world who wanted to see what lay beyond the mapped borders of the old empire. On Proxima Centauri B, the former prison world, Guard Captain Yellick had found a new purpose. His mechanical form, once dedicated to imprisonment, now served liberation. He ran a school where young beings of all species learned not just facts and figures, but empathy and connection. "The humans taught us something important," he told his mixed species class one day. That strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. Now, who can tell me about their own species' contributions to the galactic community? Hands, paws, tentacles, and appendages of every description shot up. Each student eager to share, to connect, to be part of something greater than themselves. The old propaganda had called humans weak, primitive, and insignificant. But faced with the ultimate test, humanity had revealed its true nature. They were not conquerors or warriors. They were connectors, dreamers, the species that looked at a galaxy full of strangers and saw potential friends. 3 years after the collapse, the first interspecies colony ship launched for the Andromeda Galaxy. Its crew included members of 30 different species, with humans serving not as leaders, but as what they called connection facilitators, helping the diverse crew work together during the long journey. The ship was named Hope's Dream, in honor of both the transformed prison world and humanity's unique gift. As it departed, broadcasts from across the galaxy wished it well in 100 languages, 1,000 cultures united in their hope for what lay beyond. Former Commander Zarthek, now simply Zar, stood in the observation deck of the new conquered station, watching the colony ship disappear into the void. Beside him stood Marcus Chen and Thrix, the human-Rillan partnership that had helped design the ship's life support systems. "Do you think they'll find others out there?" Thrix asked, her fur rippling with curiosity. "Other civilizations? Other empires?" "If they do," Marcus said, "they'll be ready. They carry the lesson of the collapse with them, that no empire lasts forever, but connections can span galaxies." Zar's crystalline form hummed with what his species had learned to call satisfaction, an emotion they'd rarely felt under the Empire. "Sarah Chen changed the galaxy in 47 minutes, he mused. "I wonder what changes a whole ship of connected beings might bring to Andromeda." They stood in comfortable silence, 3 beings who should have been enemies under the old system, now friends under the new. Around them, the station bustled with activity. Traders, travelers, students, and explorers from every corner of the galaxy, all moving with purpose but without fear. The Galactic Empire was gone, but what had risen in its place was not another empire. It was something unprecedented in galactic history, a true community, messy and chaotic and beautiful in its diversity. Species that had been separated for millennia now worked side by side. Technologies that had been hoarded were now shared freely. And at the heart of it all was the lesson humanity had taught. That connection was stronger than control, that empathy could topple empires, and that forgiveness could transform even the hardest hearts. In her small apartment on Earth, Dr. Amara Singh kept a photo on her desk. Sarah Chen on graduation day, smiling and full of hope for her journey to the stars. The young woman had dreamed of adventure, of seeing the galaxy and making friends among the stars. She couldn't have imagined how her journey would end, or what beginning that ending would bring. But perhaps, Dr. Singh thought, that was the most human thing of all. To face the unknown with hope, to choose connection even unto death, and to trust that others would carry on the dream. The galaxy had learned that humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were the species that bound others together, the dreamers who made the impossible real. And in a universe full of wonders yet to be discovered, that gift was the greatest power of all. As night fell over Earth, 12 billion humans settled into sleep, and as they had done since the awakening, they dreamed together. Not of empire or conquest, but of connection spanning the stars, of friends yet to be met, and of adventures yet to come. In those dreams, sometimes, they felt Sarah Chen's presence, a whisper of gratitude, a touch of joy, a reminder that one person's sacrifice had changed everything. She had shown them what they could be. Now it was up to them to become it. The Galactic Empire had fallen in 47 minutes, but what rose in its place would last far longer, built not on fear, but on the fundamental truth Sarah had died to prove, that all consciousness was connected, that empathy was the greatest force in the universe, and that love, in the end, conquered all. Among the stars, the work continued. Species learning from species, consciousness touching consciousness, the galaxy slowly healing from 10,000 years of division. It would take time. It would take patience. It would take courage. But humans had always been good at the long game, at survival through cooperation, at finding hope in the darkest moments. They had evolved on a death world and survived. They had been scattered across the galaxy and found each other. They had been pushed to the breaking point and discovered they could not be broken. Now, they stood ready to face the future, not as rulers or subjects, but as partners in the greatest experiment the galaxy had ever seen. A civilization built not on power, but on connection, not on uniformity, but on diversity, not on control, but on choice. The Galactic Empire was gone. The galactic community had begun. And somewhere in the quantum foam that underlies all reality, in the place where consciousness touches the infinite, Sarah Chen smiled and whispered to the dreams of 12 billion souls, "This is just the beginning."